let me get to know you guys because I only know you as like collectively the 88 miles per hour podcast. Can you just introduce yourselves?
All right. So my name is Santos Medrano. I am the main host of 88 Miles Per Hour podcast that I do as my co-host, my wife, who joins me more so now because when I originally was doing this podcast, my co-host, it was during the pandemic. So he was around. He's in a tribute band of Depeche Mode. So he was like, everything got closed down. So I always had him, but then everything opened up. So he's always on tour now. So then my wife, at certain dates he couldn't be available, my wife would jump in. But now,
guest hosting.
yeah, but now she's pretty much a main host. She's just jumped in and been the host.
Nice. And how long has this arrangement been happening? Like what, past 3 years or so?
Against my will.
I'm sorry, what is your name?
Julia.
Julia. Okay. So Santos and Julia. So Julia, describe to me how it was being essentially thrown into the river, so to speak.
I had done an episode here and there with him. And this has always been his thing.
Yeah.
I never wanted to I for lack of a better word, I didn't want to be a part of it because I wanted him to have his own separate thing that he does to unwind and that he's able to get away from, just being a dad and just be himself. And I was just a spectator. And because of his host has just gotten so busy and
more so the fact that the podcast has blown up last year. So it's one of those, like, we got to continue putting out content. So it's one of those, like, he's always busy and I don't want to keep posting old episodes because that's what ended up happening where I was posting video clips of certain movies and they were just like blowing up, going viral. So I was like, okay, we already have these episodes, so let me post them again. And I started doing that, but then I started running out and I told my wife, like, do you want to record with me again? Because certain ones that she stepped in were always highlights. Like, people love, like, we did one of Arachnophobia. That's really hilarious. Like, because she makes me laugh. Like, she's the funniest person I know. And like, I was like, it's always a great episode when she's on. So I was like, can you help me? Let's do some episodes. And now it's just kind of like a thing where we always do it now. It's like, all right, well, what are we watching Friday night? Okay, Saturday morning before the kids wake up, let's record an episode. So, and that's kind of what it became.
That's what's working for us right now.
Yes.
Okay. So for our listeners and our viewers out there, you are a movie recap podcast and you do, it sounds like, by the way, you always say, let's go back to the DeLorean, that you recap movies of a certain decade or like, tell me about that perspective.
You know what?
Yeah, honestly, because it's just, like, the one thing that in the early days, I called it reviews, like everybody else, like, oh, you're reviewing. But then at a certain point, my other co-host, Freddie Morales, he's like, he called it revisits. And I'm like, yeah, we are revisiting these movies because you don't need a review. Like, all the movies that we're doing, like, it's like The Goonies. Chances are you've seen The Goonies, but why am I going to review The Goonies? Like, no, what we're doing is we're revisiting these movies. So that's what it became. So what we do is we're pretty much just talking about the stuff we love about these movies, or things that didn't make sense, but we still love the movie, and we try to inflict some comedy in it. So it's pretty much revisiting. So we hop in our DeLorean, travel back in time to revisit the films and music that we loved growing, that we had growing up.
A far stretch from what we already do. We're both really huge movie buffs.
Yeah.
And since, getting married and having children and everything, it's really hard for us to kind of like, go out and formally date. And so a lot of our quality time that we spend together is watching TV. So a lot of what we do on the podcast, that's how we watch TV, even when it's just not on the show. And he's the one who would constantly push me to come on the show with him. But I have a little bit of anxiety, and I feel like he builds me up too much.
Yeah.
And he just said I'm the funniest person he knows. And I'm like, don't tell people that, because then they're going to expect me to be funny all the time.
Well, so I just listened to your episode on Jaws, and I think I stopped counting how many times you made this wonderful man laugh. I mean, you were saying a lot of funny commentary, so you obviously have a funny bone in you.
Yeah, she is hilarious. She makes me laugh all the time, so that's why it's like, of course I'm gonna want her on the show with me. I mean, she makes me laugh. So it's like, and it's perfect. And like, we feed off of each other where I don't know. It's just something about the dynamic that we have. Like, it's pretty much, yeah, our real life. Like what you listen to is how we talk every day and how we watch movies and how we, any form of commentary. Like that's what we do. So it's like, why not put it on the podcast and put some content out there?
You mentioned you had children?
Yes.
And are they old enough where you can watch movies with them? Are they in the baby stage or?
Well, my oldest because we're both divorced and we're both remarried.
Got it.
Now this is the second time around.
Yeah.
Because if you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old from my first marriage, and he's always been big into movies. He was really smart from an early age and always really into movies. So like I've been taking him to the movie theater since the day he was born. Like, he would sit through the movie theater. He never cried anything. So he's just been coming with us to the movies, and it's been great. And now that he's getting older, it's like sometimes he has some input and opinions on stuff. So it's fun. It's funny to see things from his own little perspective. But he's a teen now. So, I mean, we also have to be really careful on the content that we watch in front of him.
Yeah.
When he was younger and certain things would happen, like I could just cover his face, but he's getting older now where he doesn't want me to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then he and I also have 2 boys together, and they're 5 and 3, and they're not equipped to go to the movies. And so I will not take them. I will not have other patrons endure loud children in the theater, because as someone who loves movies, I would, and I hate having my own movie going experience ruined.
Yeah.
I won't not be that person either.
Yeah.
So he goes to a lot of movies either by himself or with my 14-year-old. So I don't go to the movies as much anymore because we're not going to take the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Netflix or Hulu night or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We get to stream everything now.
I know.
Yeah, and it's a great convenience. I do see the value in like the big screen experience, but especially if you have kids. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been to theaters with loud crying babies, and I mean, maybe it's because I don't have kids yet, but yes, I understand what you're saying. It does kind of put a damper on the movie experience, and you kind of wonder if the parents made any effort to find a babysitter. Yeah. So what kinds of content have you watched with the kids that maybe have gone into the podcast or could go into the podcast?
We watched Arachnophobia with Owen, and he was on for a little bit before he fell asleep.
Yeah, for like a half hour. He's on. Yeah. He's at the beginning. So we call that the family episode because he was on there. I did have him on because he fell in love with Alien. Yeah, like the xenomorphs. He got so obsessed of researching everything about xenomorphs. So there's it's called the kids episode. I did an Alien versus Predator episode with him. So that's pretty much it. And my intros feature our 6-year-old. So he gives the
5.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Wow.
He's turning 6 in December.
Yes, he is. I always call him 6.
But it's okay. It's okay.
In the podcast, because he intros our show. I get him to just like repeat, and so that's how he's featured. And every now and again, you'll hear other kids just in the background. I think it was in what episode where we had him roar? Labyrinth. Yes, our youngest was made a feature as Ludo for a bit. But yeah, it's like but we rarely do like kid movies on our show, on our podcast. A lot of it's the stuff that we grew up watching when we were kids, or maybe when we were like teenagers. So
nostalgic to us.
Yes, exactly. So
we did do Up.
Yeah, we did do Up. Yeah, because it was an adventure series, and that was included in that series that we did.
So I wonder how the recap experience is. Watching a movie that you didn't grow up with versus a movie that you did grow up with. Does it? I mean, I would imagine that it must hit different because one, like an Up, for instance, maybe you're going to be recapping it from the experience of watching it for the first time versus an Arachnophobia. You have all these warm childhood memories associated with it. Does that make the recap experience like totally different going into listening to your podcast?
It does. Recently we did Labyrinth, and that's a movie I had never seen. And it's only in my adulthood that I'd ever seen clips, the David Bowie scenes, but I'd never actually seen the movie. So watching that and I even mentioned it in the podcast that I feel slighted that I didn't get to see it and have those memories because I think there's something special about being able to revisit something after decades passed because cognitively, if you're a healthy individual, you're constantly changing, you're growing,
Right.
you're moving, your views, your everything is constantly changing. So seeing something through the lens of like, a child and then watching it again after it's been, years and watching it objectively as an adult, you get to have two completely new, like different experiences to the same thing. And so when I watched Labyrinth, it's like, I understand people's love for it, but I feel like watching it objectively as an adult for the first time, I don't feel like I loved it as much as everybody else does.
Another movie I think you watched for the podcast was Twilight, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, look, my sister was a big Twilight head back in the day. We saw it when it was in theaters. I was basically forced to go see it with her, so I get what you mean. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But now Santos, what did you think of it? I mean, I know what Julia thinks of it.
Oh, which one? Labyrinth or
Twilight.
Twilight? Well, she teases me because, like, for instance, what is it, Sling Blade? I've never seen Sling Blade.
He's never seen Misery. He's never seen Sling Blade. He's never seen Tombstone. There's a bunch of great.
Yeah, I've never seen. And then she'll be like, yeah, but you saw Twilight.
Twilight.
In which Tombstone I finally saw for the podcast. I recently saw for the podcast. So it was just like a ton of movies that I had missed for some reason. But I mean, like with Twilight, I don't know. I watched it because it was like, all right, let's see what this movie's all about. But by the second film, I realized like, all right, like, yeah, this movie is like really garbage. But I mean, I just thought it was okay for what it was. I mean, I was like, all right, whatever. I didn't like love it. And I didn't know the series. I had watched it. But I thought it would make, it's like, it'd be perfect content because one of her coworkers kept talking about Twilight. So she's like, hey, let's watch it.
Well, I started seeing all these TikTok clips of all these different people making fun of Kristen Stewart's acting movie. So I start seeing all these clips, and the clips alone, without any further context, are funny. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like I need to watch this movie because I want to be in on the joke. I want to know why this is so funny.
Yeah.
So finally, I bit the bullet and I watched it.
But then I was like, this is an episode. So took notes. And we watched the film and took notes, and then we recorded an episode. And the way we promoted it is like, I didn't want people to think it was a joke. So I would say, no, seriously. And like, it's all Twilight, no, seriously, we did this because I just want to make sure that's a real episode. And people liked it. They loved it. One of your friends recently told you about it, right?
Wasn't there like an issue with her and Edward's relationship that didn't hold up well? I can't remember.
In real life?
Not in real life. In the movie, like
I mean, because she's a high schooler and this guy's like, 100 years old and he's hanging out in high schools when he's a grown adult, technically. I mean, so that's why people were like weird about it because it's like, dude, why are you hanging out in high school? I know you look like a high schooler, but you're not. It's kind of like Kristen Dunst's character in Interview, where she got bit as a vampire, but as time passed, now she's in the mind of a grown woman, but her body's stuck as a child. So it's like if she were to like to hang out in elementary schools and fall in love with other little kids, that would be weird because she's a grown woman. And that's why people were like saying that's weird that Edward's, okay, he looks like a high schooler, so he has to hang out in high school and he falls in love with a teenager.
I put it on the podcast. Why can't you just tell people he's 19 and not have to go to high school?
Yeah.
Why does he keep repeating senior year?
Yeah, he could be a freshman somewhere in college, and every year just go to a different college or something. Or just even go to school. What the hell? I think that was the thing, right? Just stay home. Who cares?
Did you guys get far to like the Team Edward versus Team Jacob thing, or no? Because that's probably beyond the second movie.
I was kind of pretentious in my teen years, and I was very like anti whatever was popular. So, and I was also a huge tomboy. So like when Twilight and all that stuff was going on, the Team Edwards, Team Jacobs, and like the girls were all fawning over them, I was like just rolling my eyes. I'm like, yeah, I'm never gonna watch that movie. That looks so stupid. Like the only vampire movie that matters is Interview with the Vampire. all of them, could go kick rocks. Like, I'm never gonna watch this. And I just made I made it a point that like I'm just never going to watch this movie. Like, I will die on this hill. I refuse. Like, I'm never gonna watch Twilight because the movies are stupid. I finally won.
Bitter much?
Yeah, and we're trying to do part 2, the New Moon, and we've probably seen it 3 times already, but we have yet to record it because so much time passes that we have to rewatch it again
To remember.
but then we never record it because that movie's like 2.5 hours.
It's
So it's like, yeah, and we're like, Christ. So like, we want to do that as an episode because we have notes, all these notes, but we need to watch it again. But we just haven't put it in.
It's like never available to stream for free.
Yeah. So that's another thing. That's another choice of our films of what we do. It's like, it has to be available for us to be able to watch it.
Not always, but
Yeah, that's true. There's been a few times where we rented the movie, but
I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. I could have sworn Netflix.
oh, trust me, like we just looked it up this past week, and we're like, let's see if it's available, and it wasn't, and so that's why we haven't recorded it. But now we're gonna do Halloween themed films for this month. So as of now, we haven't recorded one, but we'll think of something.
Halloween movies from your childhood. Go. What sticks out to you?
Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Friday 13th. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I watched all the horror classics.
Yeah, I wasn't a horror kid growing up. I mean, I did see a Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, but I didn't really like horror when I was a little kid. I mean, I saw and experienced things when I was little that I was like, I don't want to watch, fake horror, because I was experiencing real horror. So I was just like one of those, like, nah, I stayed away from it. I mean, hell, 80s movie boxes were the best. The covers, and when I would be a little kid in the video store, I hated walking down that aisle because it looked so scary. I thought they were going to hop out. So it's just a lot of stuff that was going on. I was like, yeah, I never really got into horror. It wasn't until my sophomore year in high school where one of my friends started introducing me to like horror movies. I mean, in 5th grade, I did see Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which developed this horrible fear of zombies. And for years, I couldn't sleep at night because I was afraid the zombies were going to come. Because for me, night equals horror. It's scary. They're going to come at night. So I never felt safe at night. So every night I struggled sleeping from 5th grade till my sophomore year in high school. And then until I saw this Italian zombie movie.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's bad. An Italian zombie movie called City of the Walking Dead, or Nightmare City, because it's 2 different titles. That it was hilarious the way that movie was. It made me laugh that I enjoyed, like, oh, I could enjoy horror films again. And like I said, my friends started showing me all these other films. It wasn't until Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake where I got scared again, because now they can run. I was like, holy shit, like, and zombies scary again. But yeah, like, I was introduced to horror late in life because I didn't want to watch them when I was little.
You were introduced to horror. You avoided horror.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I wasn't really exposed to it. I had pretty religious parents growing up, and they had their own views about that sort of theme, Halloween, horror-ness, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think it wasn't until like maybe my teenage years, younger adult years, where I began to get an appreciation for how great horror is. And I'm the type of person that I would prefer to watch it with people, because there is that sort of like community thing with horror where if you are going to be scared out of your mind, you would rather be scared with somebody than by yourself. So I don't know. I think it's just enjoyable, like either in a movie theater or with some friends or with my wife. Like that's just my opinion on it.
What I don't understand, like for me, is that she watched a ton of horror when she was little. Now she never wants to watch any horror movies.
I can't watch new horror. Like I mentioned that I get like anxiety.
Yeah.
And I could watch anything. I can rewatch, but I can't watch something completely brand new that's horror. I get like crazy like anxiety the entire time. I just feel like this impending doom, like the hair on the back of my neck, and it's just like really like deep, intense fear. I don't know if it's just my age, or an underlying health condition.
It's like
and also I feel like new horror isn't a lot of it like a lot more gorier than it used to be.
And I'm not a fan of that. Like I've never seen any of the Terrifier. I don't care to. Like I enjoyed the first Saw. I saw the second, and after that I was done. I'm like, I don't enjoy this. Like this isn't there's no more like, I like thrillers and all of that. And I don't know. I enjoy classic slasher films, but like all of this new stuff with the blood and guts, like I don't want to watch just slaughterhouse stuff.
Yeah. It's like we got 10 minutes into Evil Dead Rises, and that was it.
It was too scary.
No more.
Yeah. We haven't gone back to it.
Because I like when I used to watch horror films in my teens, and you'd go to the movie theater and people would scream, and I'd be like, that's so stupid. Like they're drawing attention to themselves. Why do they scream? Like you're watching a movie. What part of you, what physically compelled you to scream? They're faking it. They have to be faking it. What it's a movie. It's a movie. That's so stupid. And I hated those people. I hated them so hard.
And yeah, right now that's you.
I can't help it. I don't understand what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was The Conjuring.
Yeah, The Conjuring.
Sit in the daytime, so it would be less scary.
Yeah.
With my cousin Daphne, and we were screaming the whole time. Like I get scared, and it's an involuntary response, and I literally scream.
There you go. So now you felt what those people felt in the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the last time I had that experience where it just seemed like there was this collective scream was the Jordan Peele movie Us. I think that was maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. This was his second movie after Get Out. Yeah.
I've enjoyed every movie he's put out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I enjoyed Get Out and Us. The more recent one that he did with Keke Palmer, I forgot what it was called.
You didn't like that one?
I wasn't a big fan. No, I don't know what it was, but it just didn't hit me the way those first two did.
Damn.
What did you guys like about it?
I really liked it. I think I liked the fact that it wasn't that scary, because I can't handle that much scary anymore. But I was thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
I found it entertaining.
Yeah, same here. I thought it was really entertaining, and it wasn't too much mystery because right away we get to like it. At first, we're like, "Oh, we're never gonna see the alien or whatever the hell it was," but then we fully see it later, And I like that we got that. It's like, yeah, there was some mystery, like the whole, little chimpanzee scene and all of that with the floating shoe, but other than that, like, I mean, majority of it's like we got to see it, what this thing was, and like I said, I loved it. Thought it was fun.
Have you recapped any of Jordan Peele's movies on your podcast?
No, not yet. No. I mean, huh?
Would you dare?
Would you? I mean, I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just, I mean, there's so many that we have in the bank that we want to do. It's just, we tend to always go back, like very far back. Like the ones that are like late 2000s films or 2000s tend to be movies that we revisit are ones that we love collectively, or like something like, for instance, like Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
Things like that, or movies that, like, even though we didn't grow up together watching it, or we don't see it as like our movie together, but it's become somewhat like our films because it's something like we're constantly quoting, like Step Brothers. There's lines in that movie that we quote in our lives and we've made jokes about and stuff, that it's why we did that movie. So there's certain movies from the 2000s that we've done, but rarely, like, I know I did a solo episode where I did Twisters and Inside Out 2. And that was just because I wanted to put something out. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a solo episode. But like, and then Civil War, one of my buddies, I had him come on as a guest, and we did Civil War that recently came out. But other than that, a lot of it's just 80s and 90s movies.
I'm very curious about your thoughts on Napoleon Dynamite, because I remember seeing it when it first came out, and I think I enjoyed parts of it. I think my thought for the most part was, I've never seen anything like this before. It is so dry that maybe there were moments where I just thought, okay, maybe this is supposed to be funny, but it isn't. I don't know. Like, what was it your first time around, and what was it like, revisiting it?
I fell in love from the first time I watched it. I watched it times in theaters. The first time was during its like limited release. So we had to go to the Lamille in Pasadena to watch it, because that was the only like local place that was airing the movie. So I watched it there the first time, and then I visited some cousins in Lancaster, and they happened to be playing it. I'm like, my treat, let's go watch it. So I watched it again with them, and then I saw it with another friend, and then the last time that I saw it was with my mom and my aunt, and my mom was laughing. So I thought because she doesn't usually laugh at my movies. So when we leave, and I'm like, Mom, so you really liked it? And she's like, are you kidding me? That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Laughing. It's like I was just laughing at how stupid it was. Like, I'm just surprised there's no F words in this movie, because everything you watch is F word this and S word that, and that there was no swearing in this, but it's just a bunch of ugly people. I'm like, okay, all right.
Funny movie with ugly people. What about you, Santos?
When I first, I mean, I loved it when I first saw it. I got like an early cut of, well, actually, I think before they put it in theaters, because it was an independent release, and then it got a wider release. But one of my friends was like in film or art school, and he ended up giving me a copy, so I was able to watch it at home. And I just instantly like fell in love with that movie, and I enjoyed like so much of it, of how unique it was. Even like later on, the commercials on MTV, like it just seems so. I mean, it's hard to explain. I know we really described it in our episode.
Really broad taste. Like, I understand why other people don't like it. I know that I like just so much random stuff. Like, I love South Park and I love Letterkenny, but I also love The Office, and I also love, all these other drama shows. Like, I love such a wide variety of stuff, and I feel like that's where he and I are pretty equally yoked, because half of the shows that I've seen, most people have never even heard of. Like, a lot of people growing up these days, like, never even watched the Andy Dick Show. That was so.
Yeah. So they would quote certain lines from that show. I don't know. It's just something. Just yesterday, we were nerding out on that new McMahon documentary, but it was about the wrestling part of it, like where they would talk about like certain eras.
Yeah.
And how we just started nerding out about that, and it's just like, I don't know.
I was a huge wrestling fan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not a I'm not a terribly huge wrestling fan, but I have seen WWE live a few times. It is certainly a great experience. My co-host Andrew actually also raves about that McMahon documentary, and I'm wondering going into it, because I haven't watched it yet, and I want to, like, what's the ratio between like the part of it that gets into the wrestling versus the part of it that gets into his personal troubles with the allegations?
As an entertainment piece, I thought it was done well. I'm not a reviewer. I'm not a critic. Like, my opinions, take it with a grain of salt. But I found it thoroughly entertaining. As someone I haven't watched wrestling in the last probably 10, 15 years, but in my early youth and adolescence, I watched it religiously, and I was a big fan. So having had that love, and kind of also having an awareness of like what was going on behind the scenes and the McMahon family, like, this documentary didn't sway me one way or another in my opinions of Vince McMahon. How I feel about him has not changed one bit. I still think he's the same person. I know I saw some people writing reviews about how this was trying to paint him in a positive light and garnish sympathy, and how convenient that it's released, at the timing of it, and with all these allegations and everything. And I mean, I still think he's a trash person, but but I still love wrestling, and I like a lot of it. It was part of my youth. I'm the oldest, and I have only brothers, so it was one of the things that we can actually sit and watch together without arguing, and we could like bond over it. So like, that was like like every Thursday night, SmackDown, Monday Night Raw. Sundays was something too, because that led into Mondays.
Yeah, I don't remember what the Sunday was.
Their Sundays was also something, was another wrestling night where we sit down and watch. And like, I was so obsessed with like the Hardy Boys. Like, when I turned 15,
Mm-hmm.
I had a picture of them put on my cake.
Aw.
I didn't want a quinceañera because I was like such a tomboy and anti, girly and everything. But I'm like, I want a jumper and a piñata and a cake with the Hardy Boys. So I took like a magazine clipping, and they like did like an edible image on my cake.
There you go. I love that. Santos, what did you want on your cake when you grew up?
What I wanted on my cake, I mean, Christ, Batman.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
I love Batman. So that's what I would have wanted on my cake, is Batman. Never got it, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had the Batman sleeping bag back home in Connecticut. I think my mom still has my Batman the Animated Series DVD sets, all 4 volumes. So Yep, I'm a big Batman fan too. Yep.
Yeah, I loved Batman growing up. I just remember, like my mom knew I loved everything Batman, like all the films. Not 100% all the films, but this is where the story goes. So she's like, "Oh, I got you this really cool poster, framed poster." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" And then it was from Batman and Robin. I was like, I still put it up, because I was like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is garbage. I'm like, she bought me this gift, so I had it up in my room for like years, but I was like, man, why couldn't it have been like 89 or something, or even forever at least? That one's okay.
Mom, bat nipples.
Right?
Yeah. Have you done any of the Batman movies on your podcast?
No. Well, I haven't.
I'm trying to think, because like my podcast, it goes back all the way to 2014.
Yeah, 10 years.
It's hard to remember which ones because I've had a transition with co-hosts, and like
There's been a change in cast a couple times.
yes, and there's what you call it. I know there's certain films where like we've done in the past and we've redid. Like for instance, Fright Night. I know we did that. I did it long ago with my old co-host, and then my wife and we ended up redoing that one. Same with like Lost Boys. That was recent. So I think we may have done 89, but I can't remember honestly because there's so many episodes. I don't even remember what the old ones are. I have to go look and be like, oh, wait, I didn't realize we did this episode. I'm like, but now it's like anything that's in the past, it's not off limits. If it's before 2020, we've done it. We'll probably do it again because it's like now back when it was very much a trivia show in the sense of like we didn't really have any comedy. It was me trying to talk about all the stuff I know about the movie and try to like give like fun facts. Yeah, he's like, hey, this movie, did you know that this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then once my co-host Freddie Morales joined in, it kind of became like just comedy. He would make jokes and I would feed off of that and we would go back and forth and do little bits. At that point, that's when it changed to the whole revisit. And I stopped doing like trivia. If something popped up, sure. But most of it was just having fun with it and making laughs. And now it's pretty much what the show is now. We find reasons to be funny and comedy. You might have to go. Yeah, well, she's going to step out for a bit because that's probably my...
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, no, I mean, I love that you take the comedic approach because it sounds like you guys are having a lot of fun with it. I am very curious about your thoughts on the movie Heat because I think even going into watching the movie the first time, maybe a decade or so ago, all I knew about it was like, oh, that iconic diner scene between De Niro and Pacino. So, yeah. I think you had mentioned that when you decided to do an episode about it for your podcast, this was after watching it for the first time.
Yes. Well, see, that's the thing. Like with my co-host, this was a moment where he was finally available. So, with his busy schedule, I wanted him to pick a movie that he loves, that one that, because there's been moments where like I have him on the show and I could tell he didn't watch it to refresh, so he's kind of basing it off of memory. And sometimes like I have to kind of jump in and help him with that. So, I didn't want that because it's like, man, he hasn't recorded with me for a while. So I was like, what's a movie that you know by heart? Something that you love, that you've seen so much that you could play it in your head. So then at that point, he's like, Heat. I love Heat. That's my favorite movie. So we ended up doing that. And with me, just like you said the diner scene, right? That was the thing that you knew of. My thing with Heat was, the shootout. The shootout. That's all I ever knew about this movie, the shootout. And it's pretty much like the guys who did the LA shooting, like use this as a blueprint. So it was one of those where I was like, when I finally watched it, I'm like, wow, the shootout's only like literally 10 minutes long. That's how long it is. It's a 2-hour some odd movie with 10 minutes of a shootout. And I was surprised of how good this movie was. So I going into it, I didn't know what to expect, minus the fact like, it's all going to be a shootout. That's what the movie's about. No, there's just only 10 minutes of that. And I enjoyed. Same with Tombstone, one I had never seen. And when I finally watched it, I was like, oh my God, like this is such a really good movie. And I was like mad that I had never seen it before. So it was cool that I got to see it for the podcast because what you hear in the episode is pretty much me telling you, hey, this was an awesome movie.
I love that. Now, I believe we recently acknowledged the 20th anniversary of the death of Christopher Reeve, and I know you did a Superman episode, the 1978 movie starring Christopher Reeve. Yeah, well, it's just I guess because of this relevant thing that happened recently. What were your thoughts about that? But had you already seen the movie many times before diving into it in the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, with that one, because my co-host, he's older than me, so he's in it. He's like 51, I believe. So for him, he grew up with that movie. That was like his Superman, Christopher Reeve. So when he picked it, he's like, yeah, this is what I grew up with. In which in the 80s, like I remember we went to go see part 3 and 4. I know we saw that in the theaters. I remember more part 4, in which it was garbage.
Yeah.
Much younger, so that one's vague. But with part 3, I mean part 4, like, oh yeah, we saw Superman. But like growing up, I just always knew it's like, oh, it's on TV. So it was good to rewatch it again and be like, wow, like I mean, this movie is really good for a comic book movie.
With Richard Pryor.
That's part 3.
Part
Yeah.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. Part 4. Yeah.
What was part 3 as garbage as part 4 in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, I like it because of how cheesy it is, but Pryor's in it. And there's a really good part of that movie when he goes back to Smallville. Like it's awesome to see that little, and he gets to see Lana Lane, in which the actress Annette O'Toole ends up playing his mom, Smallville. So there was like a cool little thing right there what they did with it. But I mean, part 4 is just bad all along. Hell, John Cryer's in it, and then he ends up playing Lex Luthor in the I forget, like the and the other show that they did, like on Channel 5 WB. He plays Lex Luthor. So like Ducky from 16 Candles, he's in Superman 4. I forget, he's like Lex Luthor's son or something like that. He ends up playing Lex Luthor as an adult because he's bald, so he shaved his head. So,
Right.
But yeah, I think part 4 is better than. I mean, part 3 is better because one, it has Richard Pryor, and
Right.
2, it's just like looking back, like part 4, it's like it just gets kind of boring. Where part 3, it's like I like that one. It's bad, but it's a good bad, like The Room.
What about you, Julia?
Oh, not that bad. It is. I mean, if Richard, he was on for a paycheck. That's all it was for him.
Yeah,
But
clearly.
it was still good. Like, I like it.
Yeah. You a Superman fan, Julia?
Oh yeah. He's Team Batman. I'm Team Superman.
Oh.
Like I watched the Superman animated series. I watched the the Clark Kent and Lois Lane. What the thing with
Lois and Clark.
Lois and Clark,
Mhm.
with Terry Hatcher and what's his face?
Dean Cain.
Dean Cain. That was my show. I was so obsessed with that.
I love that. I know you did an episode on Dumb and Dumber. Well, wondering if you could just give me a sort of an elevator pitch, brief perspective on your thoughts on that movie and how well 90s Jim Carrey movies can hold up to today, whether they could still be as funny or if they're seen as maybe a little bit over the top for today. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think it still hits today.
Yeah.
I mean, you post clips from today and people are still enjoy it. I don't think there's anything in there where people are like, oh, this is dumb.
There's some fairly like jokes that didn't age well, but it was a different time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't think of one from that film, but I mean, it's like it was good. Like, it was hilarious. It was the movie I saw by myself because it's like none of my friends wanted to go. So I went to go see it, and I remember sitting in the theater by myself just laughing. But it was one that I think it's like, it came out in a time where Jim Carrey had like 3 hits in a row, right? Ace Ventura, The Mask, and then Dumb and Dumber. And,
All the same year.
yeah, and they were amazing movies. I mean,
And they all had cartoon series.
oh yeah, they did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I
that's
watched
true.
them.
Yeah,
I was obsessed with Jim Carrey. I saw Dumb and Dumber at the drive-in, and I was like 9 or 10 or something, and I was in love. That was it.
yeah.
That
I think, yeah. I mean, for me, it was like, I think Ace Ventura took a bit. The Mask, I don't know why. Like, I was like, okay, it's cool. But Dumb and Dumber is the one that really got me invested in Jim Carrey, that made me go back to those movies and be like, appreciate them.
Second chance.
Yeah. Where like Ace Ventura, that one I fell in love with more. It took me a while for The Mask, but Dumb and Dumber, just something about that film that, I mean, it's freaking hilarious. I mean, that's one that we quote certain things from that, more so the Samsonite scene. About when they're trying to figure out the name. And I know we had a situation like that. Oh, it was in the podcast. It was on we haven't posted it yet, but we're gonna hold off on that episode. I keep disappearing. But yeah, it was because we did Overboard with Kurt Russell. So I think we have a moment with Samsonite, but that's how we are, because there's certain films that we grew up, we didn't watch together, but yet somehow it became like a movie with us because we quote it so much.
I love that. Well, it's been a great time talking with you guys. Can you just remind people like how they can find you, like, where to listen to the podcast, where to follow you on socials?
So we're 88 Miles Per Hour Podcast. You can find us on anywhere you listen to podcasts, more so like obviously Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you want to listen to the episodes with my wife, it's Julia Diaz, because that's what I put. There's episodes with Freddie Morales. So when the episode, like the last one, Labyrinth, I put Labyrinth with Julia Diaz. There's other ones like it would say with Freddie Morales. We've also have guests on our podcast, like for instance, Efren Ramirez, who plays Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite. He's gets it on our show a few times. So like I said, we have interviews, but with the podcast, anywhere you can find us where you listen to podcasts, check us out. And then on Instagram, it's 88MPH podcast. I have a Twitter, but we don't really get any traction on there, so I don't even bother.
For wordsmith.
Yeah, well, no, it's just Twitter. No one's on there. Like, it's like it's easier to put Instagram. The videos is what hits for us, and all the clips that I post, and and things like that. So Instagram would be your best bet to find us. So it's 88 MPH podcast, and that's where we're at on Instagram. So there, or just wherever you listen to podcasts.
Any movie that's currently out in theaters, or a movie that's about to be out in theaters, where you're just like, okay, we got to recap that.
I am so out of the loop when it comes to like new movies because we stream everything. We don't watch commercials because we do like the plans with the no commercials, and I don't really come across like new trailers and stuff. So I honestly don't know like what's upcoming.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that because of the way I've been with the podcast, there's no new movies where like I want to do that for the podcast. Like I want that to be an episode. Everything is always like, man, like, oh, there's that movie.
We have a connection to that. We have like specific things memorized, and that we know we can like just immediately reflect on it.
Yeah,
that's harder with something that's new. We don't have that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I did Twisters, and that was just me trying to remember and recap the episode. And that one I did by myself, but like, yeah, she's right. Like we try to do films that we know by heart, because it's like, that's where we could just come up with, and like, we don't have to necessarily watch the movie, even though we still do, but most of our content comes from our memories of what we have about, and we have stories. Like we did Vegas Vacation. That's our newest episode. And there's stuff that we remember, like when I was like, oh, like I have this memory about this moment, or so on and so forth. So that's why my focus on new films is very small, where I'm like, oh, like, yeah, we got to watch this. No, I'd rather do something old and be like, hey, you know what? We haven't done Nacho Libre. Let's do Nacho Libre. We quote that all the time. So that's where I stand on that,
Movie. Such a great movie. Yeah. Are you guys big Jack Black fans? I could watch them all day.
Yeah.
Big Jack Black fan, big Nacho Libre fan.
Yeah.
I was for loving Nacho Libre. When I was pregnant the last time, I had to go to the doctor's office to do like one of those diabetes tests, and you have to stay there for 2 hours. So like they give you you drink this fluid, you wait for 2 hours, they draw your blood before and then after to check your blood sugar and see if you've developed diabetes. So while I'm waiting, I'm the only person in the waiting room, and they're playing Nacho Libre. So I'm anytime it's on TV, I'm gonna watch it.
Yep.
Love it that much. I'm just not gonna get bored of it. So it's on, it's playing, I'm watching it, I'm thoroughly invested and enjoying it. And I could hear like the nurse people, behind me. One of them, this like lady's telling like a guy nurse, he's like, you should take that off. That movie's so stupid. I swear I've seen it like 1,000 times. It's always on. And I turn around and I'm like, I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you must have a good heart.
Oh, wow. What does that even mean?
Like, that's the most backhanded compliment. What does that mean?
Right?
No.
Yeah. Oh, you're so generous to put up with this crap. I think that's what she was trying to say, which is like stupid.
But then she turns around and she like asks the guy nurse, like, why is he in an orphanage? And I'm just like rolling my eyes like, B, you just said you've seen this 1,000 times. Why don't you know why he's in an orphanage?
Yeah,
You
right.
should see it 1,000 times.
Speaking of Jack Black, our next episode is going to be Orange County.
Oh, all right.
Currently seeing that one right now. But that's our next episode is Orange County with Jack Black and Colin Hanks.
I look forward to that. All right. Well, Santos, Julia from the 88 Miles Per Hour podcast, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
All right, you too.
You too.
All right, thanks for having us on.
All right. Thanks. Take care. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.